Today we are going to fly from KROG to KFYV, a short 15-minute flight in a classic Cessna 172. And for the children of the magenta line, we are going to do this old school. We're not going to use a GPS. So we're going to start off at CROG. We're going to use the VOR to track over the VOR. Then we're going to head off on a specific radial until we join the localizer approach on runway 16 at KFYV. Here at KROG, we are going to take off from runway 20, then we're going to turn left and track the VOR on a course of about 181. We are then going to use the VOR to fly radial until we get to this waypoint here called Elmi, where we are going to turn onto a 168 course to fly a localizer approach to runway 16. So we're going to tune the Razorback VOR into our navigation radio number 1, and we are going to fly over it, and then we're going to fly 6.2 DME away from it on a radial of 222. We are then going to switch to our localizer frequency, and we are going to track the localizer from 11 DME onto runway 16. We know at Elmi we have to be at 3,000 feet, and at Hog, which is the initial approach fix and is 5 DME from the threshold, we need to be at 2,500, and we need to monitor our steps down to the runway. We're not going to fly a stepped approach. We are going to fly a constant descent. We'll be doing about 70 knots, so we'll need to go 350, 400 feet per minute, and we'll watch the PAPIs and adjust that as we go down. So I'm going to arrive at Elmi at 3,000 feet, and then I'm going, which is 11 DME from the runway threshold. I'm then going to descend to 2,500 feet over those 6 DME at Hog, which is the initial approach fix. I'm then going to descend at a constant pace, and I aim to be at Zapco, which is 3.7 DME away. I hope to be at 2,080 feet. At D2.7, I need to be at 1,850 feet, and I must see the runway by then. I'm about 600 feet above the runway. I hope to see it well before that. The missed approach will be to climb to 2,100 feet and then turn right on a heading of 295 up to 4,000 feet, and then join the Razorback 221 radial to fly and hold at. So let's hop into the aircraft, and the first thing I'm going to do is to set the altitude to my initial altitude, which is 3,000 feet. Let's get the heading bug centered on the runway heading. I'm going to set the nav1 radio to the VOR frequency, which is 116.4, and on standby I'll have the localizer frequency, which is 111.9. The nav2 radio, I'm also going to tune that to the Razorback VOR 116.4. On localizer number 1, I'm going to set the course to 181, which is a line directly to the VOR. I'm also going to set the bearing to the VOR1. VOR2 I'm going to set to a course of 221, which is the away radial from the VOR. And I'll also set bearing 2 to that VOR. Let's set up the autopilot. I'm going to set vertical speed at about 600 feet per minute. I'm also going to push nav, which will arm the localizer. I'm going to set my minimum for 1830 baro. Let's turn the GPS off so that we can't cheat. So as I take off, I'm going to follow the flight director to about 800 feet. Then I'm going to arm nav, which should track to the VOR, and also climb at about 600 feet per minute. Quick instrument scan. The autopilot is locked on. The VOR is correct. Speed is good, and we are ascending at 600 feet per minute. So continue to do a T-scan of your instruments, and let's look and see how far we are away from the vortex. I'm going to set my heading for 221, which is the next heading that I need, and always stay ahead of the aircraft. Always be aware where you are in the flight. You can see we're coming up to the VOR and we're going to make a right turn. As we come up to the VOR and the 2 arrow disappears, I will switch to heading mode. So now in heading mode and turning to a 221 course, I'm going to set the track on my VOR1 to 221, and I could use VOR2, but I like to just stay on the VOR1. So we've come out a little bit left of where we should be, so I'm going to use heading mode to get back on course. So I'm going to turn a little right towards the path I should be, and as soon as I see that green track coming in, I'll switch to nav mode. So now I'm going to watch that green track come in towards my aircraft, and as it gets close I'm going to switch from heading mode to nav mode. So now you can see it says VOR on the top. It's green, so it's locked in, and the autopilot is going to do the hard work of lining me up. So I'm going to use the DME on the bottom left, not the one on the top. The bottom left is tracking the VOR, and the one at the top is only there because I put the flight plan in the GPS as well. So my next fix is LME, which is 6.2 DME from the Razorback VOR. So at that point I must have tuned my radio into the localizer. So as we come up to LME, I'm going to change nav1 to the frequency of the localizer, and as you see that it kicks me out of VOR mode into roll mode. It's always a good idea to keep your heading bug on the track that you're on. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the nav button again. When you don't have vertical guidance, as in this case, You don't need to hit the approach button, just the nav button. And now you can see that the aircraft is turning me to a 168 course. The headings in Microsoft Flight Simulator are slightly out, but it still seems to work. So again, I'm watching the DME at the bottom left, not the one on the top. The one at the bottom left is to the Loacalizer, and the one at the top is to the airport. So lateral navigation is taken care of, and the next thing I've got to do is take care of the vertical navigation. So now I'm taking care of my speed. I can start getting my flaps out, and at HOG, which is 5 DME, I'm going to start my descent. So I'm going to turn my altitude down to 1800 in readiness for descending at 400 feet per minute from the 5 DME mark. Here we are starting our 400 feet per minute descent, and my speed is good enough to start putting the flaps out. So as I get to 3.7 DME, I'm about 120 feet too high. I should be at 2080. I'm going to speed up my descent to 600 feet per minute, just till I catch up with the glide scope. At 1900 feet, which is 70 feet above my minimums, I can see the runway lights, so the landing is on. So 4 reds and you're dead, and 4 whites you're as high as a kite. So I'm a bit high, so let's get the autopilot off and get down onto the runway. And as we begin to land, thank you for watching and goodbye.